Amy Westerfelt, a freelance journalist that covers the environment from various perspectives, wrote an article for Forbes discussing whether recycling was bad for the environment in 2012. She writes about an issue still relevant today. Throughout the article, she clearly breaks down the agenda behind recycling and its effects to inform Americans how their recycled plastics are truly being handled. Westerfelt presumes it could be argued that outdated or misinformed Americans believe that recycling and the environmental movement to reduce waste and contamination are directly correlated. Since there is controversy with recycling, Westerfelt introduces her analysis using the phrases, "it could be argued," for old school environmentalists, and in the early days, back in the 1980s, the cause was noble and pure. In doing so, she is creating a division between old school environmentalists and current eco-activists, implying that over time, recycling has grown out of itself. Just as many operations in the US, time passes, the population grows, trends in society develop, and that operation that was so minuscule becomes an industry based on supply and demand. To develop her claim on outdated recycling, she uses the phrases, "on the surface, it's still a good idea," with the idea of recycling them in a closed loop and in its modern day incarnation. This portrays Westerfelt's appreciation for early day eco-activists and their genuine efforts to commence recycling at the time. At the end of the second paragraph, Westerfelt uses diction to scream how irritated she is with Americans' constant ignorance to consumerism, every year touting, neglecting, soaring consumption, assuage any guilt, unnecessary disposable goods, tossing, hauling, each week. All these words are used to ridicule mindless Americans. Westerfelt deliberately reveals her sentiment of dissatisfaction to reel in her audience. After introducing an issue, it is imperative to know who is responsible for it and how they manage it. Trade groups have become the largest proponents and financial sponsors of recycling. In the following sentence, she cites a website which proves that trade groups have obtained control over the recycling industry. Some of you may be thinking, so what? Well, just because the American Plastics Council develops innovative ways to package recycle, it does not mean that it's 100% eco-friendly or that all your plastics are truly being recycled. These trade groups are working a business. They will work in favor of supply and demand, not because of the colossal amount of indestructible plastics destroying nature. Westerfelt summarizes the plastic industry's agenda in recycling as a twofold, of course. One, to ensure a steady supply of new materials. Two, to help consumers justify the use of plastic in packaged items is safe because of recycling. This breakdown of their interests opens the reader's eyes to the reality behind the public's knowledge of the industry. Westerfelt communicates to her readers that recycling is more than just turning waste into reusable material, but it's a commodity business that fluctuates with supply and demand as well as the global market. Westerfelt quotes Jean Jones, the executive director of Southern Waste Information Exchange, which is a nonprofit that informs the public on recycling waste. Jean Jones said, "The hope is that eventually the markets will turn around and the material is sold, but I've heard it gets landfilled because the community doesn't have the demand, space, or the company to deal with it." It seems that Westerfelt is focusing on how wasteful the recycling industry is and the burden we create by buying in disposables and not caring enough to, as Jones put it, deal with it. To obtain credibility for her argument, Jean Jones serves as a sufficient source because of his specific knowledge and past experience in waste management. Westerfelt chose a man who knows the industry. Following her structural pattern of unraveling her argument, she has introduced the problem, given her opinion, stated who is in control and why, and now she's attacking the idea that many Americans do not understand how to recycle. Halfway through the article, Westerfelt states, moreover, not everything that's recyclable actually gets recycled. She does this to inform her readers that there are different types of plastics, like PET or HDPE, and this is essential to acknowledge that. First, you've got to get consumers to dispose of items properly. 2 years ago, my friends and I decided to implement a recycling program at our school. As cabinet members of Eclipse Club, an environmental awareness club, we collaborated to reduce our waste. These are pictures I have taken from our recycling bins that we decontaminate weekly before we get picked up by the vendors. The top picture is what plastic recycling bins should look like. The bottom is what I deal with most weeks. Then you've got a collection system in place. These are 2 out of 15 bins that we have at Mast Academy. We found these bins the most efficient during research at University of Miami campus. Then recyclers typically need to have a buyer lined up to justify recycling anything. Waste management picks up our recyclables. Each vendor has their own requirements for the recyclables they collect. The following paragraph begins with Jerry Fishbeck, Vice President of United Resource Recovery Corporation, saying the same as Westervelt did in the previous paragraph. There's a difference between things being recyclable and actually being recyclable. In order to get her audience to understand her focus, she emphasizes this statement. Jerry Fishbeck, another man who knows about the industry, offers credibility to Westervelt's conversation. This further validates her words because she's not hiding the truth from her audience, she's simply discussing an issue. By feeding her readers with logos and ethos, Westervelt creates a space where they can digest the information and find methods to reduce the negative aspects of recycling. Jerry also includes that recycling is based on critical mass. This determines whether plastics such as PVC and bioplastics are put into landfills or if there's enough material to create a new stream. Westervelt stresses on the fact that not all recyclables are recycled and how simplistic the industry is. She ends the conversation on how the recycling industry is not based on conservation and sustainability, but on industry, leaving it to the reader to decide what to do. Her next point opens with a short but strong statement. Emissions are another sticky subject for recycling. Using sticky subject depicts how complicated her original question is. Can recycling be bad for the environment? Looking back at Westervelt's first point, recycling initiated environmental awareness, but as it became businesslike, it lost its original purpose and now contributes to the net greenhouse gas emissions. To conclude the paragraph, she cites that recent studies of air quality in Oakland recycling centers were, perhaps surprisingly, included amongst the city's polluters. Westervelt chose to reference Oakland's environmental issues because of its irony. Recycling centers are meant to reduce pollution, and it perhaps surprisingly manages to contribute to a mass amount of air pollution. The conversation about Oakland's crisis continues on to the next paragraph. The city wanted to keep the plant within its limits, not just to maintain its tax base and keep jobs, but to support the so-called hidden economy, wherein some local residents make a living collecting and redeeming recyclable materials. At this point, Westervelt reached the answer to why this remains a current issue. Americans' selfish agendas is what has and will continue to dissuade us from finding the ideal solution to many issues, whether it's recycling, social issues, or effectiveness. After reading this article, I'm on the same page as Westervelt when she says, it's a perfect illustration of the state of recycling today. Like any other business, it's neither altruistic nor completely self-serving. It comes with clear societal and environmental benefits, perhaps more so than many businesses. But it also comes with some costs and cannot be considered a perfect solution to the United States' large and ever-growing consumption and waste problems. Westervelt spoon-feeds her audience so that they can create their own solution to this crisis. My way to be proactive is to lessen the amounts of plastic I use. For example, stop using plastic straws and bottles and use reusable ones. Next time you purchase something at a store, question whether you need a plastic bag. Research how to properly recycle if you do use plastic goods. And pack your lunch using containers, not Ziplocs. There's many ways that you can reduce the amount of plastic you use. When it comes to reducing the amount of indisposables you use, it's all about the effort you put into it individually.